Hello, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone, depending on where you are joining us from. My name is Rohit Pujari. I'm a partner solutions architect with AWS. Today we have our guests from REI to share with you how they use intelligent threat detection and edge protection on AWS with Splunk. Let's begin. The customers I talk to tell me that security in an on-premises environment is really hard. Whether you're building on-prem data lake or customer-facing application, or even a backend application, in large part because of lack of visibility and lower degree of automation. So take an example of a CIO who's trying to get handle on how many open servers he or she may have and where they might be running. In a case of a proverbial server running under developer's desk, a developer has run a POC and the POC has concluded, but the server is still connected to the network unattended and running something potentially destructive. With AWS, companies and CIOs and leadership can have a comprehensive picture of exactly what resources they're running at any moment. Not only AWS allows you to inventory your resources, but it can also monitor the configuration of those resources over time and react to the drift in configuration by taking automated action. On top of that, you can use services like Amazon Guard Duty to monitor for malicious and unauthorized behavior within your AWS accounts and workloads. You can also use turnkey services like AWS Shield that safeguards your application from distributed denial of service attacks. And AWS Cloud infrastructure is architected to be one of the most flexible and secure cloud computing environments available today. AWS's scale allows us to make significantly more investments in security policing and countermeasures that any large company can afford themselves. Hence, some of the most security-sensitive workloads run on AWS today. REI states that their AWS security is far superior as compared to their on-premises across several dimensions, allowing them to do patching, encryption, auditing using the cloud best practices. Similarly, Slack has come out and said that their AWS posture allows them to boost their own security, which is really important for their business. Similarly, we have Richard Daly, CEO of DNA Nexus, who has said that AWS allows them to perform genomic analysis and clinical case studies in a secure, compliant manner, which was not previously possible. One of the great things about AWS is that all customers, whether you are a college student in dorm or a large enterprise, you get to inherit the exact same best practices in security controls and operational procedures that are built to satisfy the requirements of one of the most security customers we have. That gives you the flexibility to run with comfort knowing your workloads are going to be secure. At the same time, AWS provides a comprehensive visibility into your account activity and actions that is occurring within your infrastructure. And we make the security telemetry available to you so you can use the downstream solutions such as Splunk to further analyze that data and use that towards your security investigations. We have a world-class team of security experts monitoring our systems 24/7 to protect your customer content. We don't disclose data unless we are required to do so by law under legally binding order or subpoena. And even in those cases, we notify our customers proactively so they can seek protection from the disclosure. AWS also provides a number of deeply integrated security services like AWS Shield, Guard Duty, and some of the other ones which allow you to monitor or enhance your security posture without having to install software or maintain this vast security infrastructure. In addition to that, AWS has a number of partners that offer security tools and services to help customers meet their security objectives. And AWS has gone in and has achieved a number of internationally recognized certifications and accreditations that demonstrate our compliance with third-party assurance frameworks, like SOC 123. Customers can be HIPAA and PCI compliant with AWS. We have also achieved a number of international certifications, like IRAP for Australia, G Cloud for UK, and we are constantly listening to our customers and looking into other certifications that define the future. At AWS, we have a shared security model with our customers where AWS manages the control and the components of the host operating system, virtualization layer, down to the physical security of the infrastructure where we operate our services. And customers are really responsible for building secure applications. We provide a variety of best practices through our best practice documents, direct interaction through our professional services and solutions architects, and also encryption tools that you can use to enhance or deliver application-level security measures. At AWS, customers retain full control and ownership of their data. You can choose the region to store your data. It doesn't have to move unless you decide to move it. You can choose to encrypt the data as a part of a standard security process for sensitive content. We provide a number of encryption tools that allow you to secure data at rest as well as in motion. The encrypted content is rendered useless unless you have the right applicable decryption keys. But regardless of whether you choose to encrypt your data or not, AWS does not look at your data. So all in all, you have access to this fully programmable, robust technology platform where you can securely and compliantly build your business. Now let's hear from Splunk about their relationship with Splunk and how they're helping customers gain end-to-end security visibility through their offerings. Over to you, Jay.
Thanks so much, Rohit. Good morning, afternoon, and evening to everyone on the line. As introduced earlier, my name is Jay Lee from Splunk. I sit on our product marketing team focused on security, and my colleague, Wissam Ali Ahmad, is the technical lead for our global strategic alliances team here at Splunk. We're going to spend a few minutes providing a quick overview of the Splunk perspective on everything from our partnership to key integrations and our offerings. So let's dive in. So Splunk and AWS have had a top-tier partnership for some time, and we collaborate at nearly every level, including exec alignment, product integration, technical services, sales, marketing, you name it. Everything from how we go to market, engage with customers, and prioritize and align technology initiatives. And this has been the case since we at Splunk went all in on a cloud strategy, and specifically with AWS at the center of that strategy. So a quick recap of key partnership milestones. We see on the left the former Splunk CEO, Godfrey Sullivan, now retired as CEO but still chairman, speaking at reInvent in 2014, delivering a message about the commitment to investing in the partnership. In the center, a 2016 fireside chat with CEOs Doug Merritt and Andy Jassy, not only reaffirming the importance of the partnership, but also sharing concrete examples of customers who basically successfully migrated to the combined agility and security of AWS while also maintaining end-to-end visibility and leveraging incident response capabilities using Splunk. And on the right, Doug Merritt, Splunk CEO, presenting at the AWS Summit keynote in April 2017, where he drove home the significance of how AWS and Splunk share the value of downright obsession with ensuring our customer success. Splunk has over 7,000 security and compliance customers worldwide. Our holistic approach to security, which covers everything from security posture to investigation and forensics to advanced threat detection, compliance, incident response, security orchestration and automation, everything in terms of all the security operations, has helped organizations across all verticals, market segments, and global regions. And for those of you who've been in the security space for some time, you know how our industry loves to sling buzzwords, but the one persistent issue when it comes to InfoSec is the pervasive risk of data breach. And ensuring you're minimizing that risk applies no matter who you are or what technology you're using or what industry you're in. And you don't need us to tell you that. Also, we won't bore you or try to scare you with headlines and latest high-profile breaches, but we will point out that the cost of breach is real. And for those of you with direct responsibilities in InfoSec, IT security, or compliance and privacy, this is a critical area to ensure you're addressing. So data breaches do have real financial impact that is now a lot more quantifiable on top of any fines you might incur, for example, from GDPR or state privacy law, those kinds of things. The point here is that data breaches themselves have a hard cost, and in this particular slide, based on a recent study by the Ponemon Institute, you can see that there are actually component costs associated with the individual stages of handling a data breach. So we're looking at detection and escalation through to notification, the response itself, as well as all the estimated amount of actual opportunity or business lost as a result of the breach. So, these are just global averages. In the U.S., you'll note that costs may typically be higher since we're a more litigious jurisdiction, and that can make the costs add up even more quickly. So one of the most important aspects to any successful technology migration is therefore maintaining the visibility and security posture throughout the entire process, from design to dev test to QA, staging, production. So again, we're trying to minimize the risk of the data breach occurring. And Splunk's holistic approach to data is a key to that visibility. Thanks to our partnership with AWS, we're able to provide a pragmatically viable way to maintain that visibility for security and IT ops use cases alike. And this helps to scale migration process despite any complexities resulting from, say, a hybrid approach or any migration complexity. And doing this within a consolidated singular solution can keep typically disparate manual tasks, such as cost, capacity, resource management, et cetera, streamlined and efficient. And how do we do that? So at Splunk, we talk about making your machine data visible, accessible, and valuable. And as the platform for machine data, Splunk collects all the data into one place so you can search, analyze, visualize, and report on your findings to solve a breadth of use cases. Again, I mentioned IT, security, other use cases, and just in general, the business mission overall. So it all starts with collecting data from anywhere and everywhere. So we leverage universal forwarding and indexing technology to do this with in such a manner that it has negligible operational impact. Then you can search and analyze across all your data. So with powerful search and a concept we call schema on the fly, this means you don't have to deploy a database or worry about pulling a predetermined schema together. This translates to less impact on overall IT resources. And of course, the end goal is to get real-time insights from that machine data. So through powerful and intuitive dashboards and visualization tools, we enable that capability. And again, thanks to the partnership, we have integrations for key AWS data sources, including EC2, Lambda, Kinesis Data Firehose, and Amazon Guard Duty. And those integrations enable comprehensive visibility for your AWS environment. So this allows, again, for you to easily search, analyze, correlate, visualize, and then act on those operational and security insights you're getting out of your machine data. So let's just take a couple slides to take a look at some investigative and posture methods. So when it comes to getting to the root cause of a security issue, it's important to understand the questions you need to ask. So for example, if you see something that warrants deeper investigation, such as changes to a security group or unusual activity around provisioning or traffic flows or resource allocation, you obviously want to know who was involved or which VPCs are in question, or identify the trail of associated activity related to any given alerts or potentially suspicious activity. So in other words, you just need to get good at investigating what's going on, being able to ask any questions of, again, your data to understand how you can operationalize such an investigative mindset. An investigation starts with knowing what's going on from a top-level view. So are there unexpected spikes, for example, or drops in changes to configuration of security policy, or error activity, or provisioning or API activity? So, you're looking for things like unusual number of first-time seen activities, that kind of stuff. Are basic permissions configured properly on S3 buckets and other resources? Those kinds of questions. And that's going to help you get better at your investigative practice, because again, it starts with knowing where to start looking. And this is a critical area that Splunk can help to streamline and provide key actionable context to support better cyber hygiene across the entire hybrid deployment. So at this point, I'll hand it off to Wissam, who will describe the integrations and deeper capabilities that enable some of the methodologies that I've introduced here.
Thanks, Jay. So today you can actually get started with using Splunk to centrally analyze and monitor and visualize your AWS services. And you do this using apps and add-ons. So Splunk has built an app dedicated for many of those AWS visibility and security and monitoring. It's simply called the Splunk App for AWS. It's a free app available for download from our marketplace, splunkbase.com. The app contains several security-focused dashboards and detections, which Jay just mentioned. In addition, there's another free app I'd like to mention also called the Splunk Security Essentials, which comes with several also detections and security rules and searches and use cases around AWS. On the flip side of our premium offering is the Splunk Enterprise Security. This is a Splunk built premium app, and it covers most of the use cases and features of an analytics-driven SIEM. We like to call it next-generation SIEM. It's a complete solution for quick detection, investigation, and response to internal and external attacks. Splunk ES provides insights into machine data that generated from security technologies such as network, endpoint, access, malware, vulnerability, and identity management, identity information. In addition, with the adaptive response framework in ES, you can take actions across those complex security tools and domains. Again, all these apps are not possible without the power of Splunk add-ons that we built both in collaboration with AWS. These add-ons collect, ingest, extract data from almost all the AWS services that are highlighted here. So let's talk about Amazon Guard Duty. So Amazon Guard Duty is the security service that analyzes and processes VPS flow logs and AWS CloudTrail event logs. Essentially, it's like an IDS or IPS. Guard Duty uses security logic and AWS usage statistics techniques to identify unexpected and potentially unauthorized and malicious activity. This can include issues like escalations of privileges, uses of exposed credentials, or communication with malicious IPs, URLs, domains. The Guard Duty then triggers alerts via the Guard Duty console or through the Amazon CloudWatch event. So Splunk was one of the first partners that integrated with Guard Duty when it launched. Guard Duty, so then what happens is that Guard Duty alerts tell you something happened, right? It alerts you, but it does not give you the how. And so that's where Splunk comes in. We're sending the alerts into Splunk, where you can aggregate across availability zones and finding types to roll up to focus on the signal versus noise, but also investigate across your entire stack, plus correlate with other data sets in Splunk for comprehensive investigation and remediation. So let's take a look here, a short clip, how Guard Duty alerts look in Splunk and how you can leverage Splunk's power to investigate incidents using that data. This is the Splunk app for AWS. We're gonna pivot and take a look at the Guard Duty data, doing a quick search for that data in Splunk by the source type. So when the data comes in, it's sorted out or tagged by a source type. I see here I have about 1,400 events during 24-hour period. All the fields have been automatically extracted for me by Splunk. All of the fields from the findings. So now I can quickly analyze these alerts. For example, I can take a look at by finding types. I can quickly, if I want to plot a time chart by different finding types, I can quickly do that in Splunk, literally in a few seconds. I can click here on the finding type. I can ask Splunk to plot that data over time by top values. And I can see the trends I have, which right now in the last 24 hours, most finding. And these data are coming in from a Kinesis stream. Now let's take a look at some actionable dashboards. We built a couple of example dashboards. This is focusing on findings around EC2 instances. I can see I have an alert here on my EC2 instance, something bad, too many open ports, unauthorized. I can click on that finding, and because I have that correlation, I can quickly link up to the AWS app and see the details of the EC2. Now looking at unauthorized access on the user's behaviors, what they're doing, I can see I have several users here doing unauthorized API access. Who is this user? What is this user doing? I can click here and get more details from other data sets here from CloudTrail and correlate that. And if I want to do more, let's say I want to use this Splunk Security Essential searches, I can actually open the search window here and do more investigative details like hunting if I want to do that. So talking more about this Splunk Enterprise Security. So you can feed AWS data in ES today. And as a security team, if you have processes in place, you may be interested in a SIEM, right? Splunk offers Splunk Enterprise Security, which has been a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant, and really can complement or replace an existing SIEM solution. It does all the things you would expect a SIEM to do with built-in posture and notable event dashboards, and processes and workflows to drive coordination across global teams and investigations. Our research team also providing content updates which provides threat intelligence along with recommended next steps to really act like an additional member of your security team, documenting best practices and aligning investigations to stages of the kill chain and the critical controls. These aren't just single searches or dashboards in ES, but rather they give you the ability to detect and scope and remediate with confidence. And even further, we have integrated adaptive response so that customers don't have to manually get the answers that they need, but use adaptive response to fetch supporting contextual details. The equivalent of asking an initial question and getting the answer back with all the associated follow-up questions. This is the equivalent of that, answering that. In addition, you can also use adaptive response actions from various security vendors to take actions in response to an incident. For AWS, we developed an adaptive response actions that will help you automate the mitigation of risk in your AWS environment, among other ones. So these actions come in the form of a serverless app. We have the Lambda functions, Lambda blueprints for those. Splunk was a launch partner for the AWS serverless applications. We developed 7 serverless apps or blueprints to help AWS customers take advantage of best practices for leveraging AWS data and Splunk. And that's the GitHub address for the AWS Lambda blueprints. One of the actions that we developed with Adapt Response is like a single click, maybe really 3-click. It's a single deployment of all adaptive response components available in the template for AWS Serverless Repository. You can do things like move an S3 bucket from public to private, start or stop an instance, create a notable event out of that, flag issues as anonymous for further investigation, and more. Finally, Splunk is available in the AWS Marketplace. You have the options to sign up as a Splunk Cloud or launch a Splunk Enterprise instance. And it's an annual contract subscription and with automatic discount as you go multi-annually. And you can get that today in several, comes the license for the Splunk Cloud, several increments of 5 gigabytes. And you can easily upgrade and available today in the marketplace with also a new offering around Splunk Insights for Infrastructure, which is an app and a bundle pay-as-you-go license. Now I'll pass it along to our REI guests, David and Rick.
Hi, David Bell here. I lead the infrastructure cloud services space at REI.
Hi, this is Rick Adams. I'm one of the senior system engineers.
REI is a U.S. national outdoor retailer, $3 billion company. We have 17 million co-op members. We're a co-op heavily focused on our customer connections, as well as not only in brick and mortar stores and our 154 retail stores, but also digital engagements. And I'll talk about some of that in a moment as far as our movement out to AWS. So both our back of house and front of house teams have been moving out to AWS for a variety of different workloads, from increase the customer engagement focus to back of house merchandising teams. There's a heavy focus on movement out to AWS for velocity and innovation that one gains from cloud architecture. Our team has been heavily focused on pulling down non-differentiated work from our development communities with a heavy focus on a DevSecOps practice. In doing so, we identified that we lacked some pretty key areas of edge protect services, specifically the secure ingress path for integrating for applications in AWS, as well as a common set of logs available for WAF and IDS at the edge within our AWS organization. So in order to implement the proper edge protect services here at REI, for again, both our back of house and front of house teams moving out to AWS, our centralized DevSecOps team focused on native solutions available in AWS, heavily favoring those native solutions like Guard Duty, as well as some on our list as Shield. But within the VPC of each of our application teams, we, for any ingress needs or external facing endpoint that are in each of the VPCs. We front each of those virtual private clouds for each applications with an ALB, and we scrape those logs into Splunk using CloudWatch. We'll walk through all of this in a moment in depth. And those logs are hosted in Splunk Cloud. And the other Splunk products that we use, again, are the Guard Duty module within Splunk and the Splunk apps for AWS. One of the key differentiators here is the provisioning practice used for implementing Splunk within each of our VPCs is part of our infrastructure as code pipeline. So all of our services we provide to our development communities, again, in our internal teams here in front of house and back of house, are implemented through a set of Terraform modules that are deployed through an infra code pipeline. In addition, we are auditing through compliance as code using things like AWS config to audit our posture for each of our VPCs in alignment with our Edge Protect service.
Hi, this is Rick Adams from REI. I'd like to at least cover a little bit of what we have done with the Splunk Guard Duty add-on along with the AWS add-on. And in particular, while they're technically separate apps, we've actually kind of moved them together so that we can give our own team, a DevSecOps team, along with our security team, a single place to actually go look at this data. So we've actually moved a lot of that Guard Duty application and panels up into the AWS or Splunk app for AWS. So we've actually created a whole new page, included new panels and whatnot. In particular, we've also created 2 new panels in there to quickly look at how many Guard Duty findings we're finding per account and how many Guard Duty findings total. So we can know if we're seeing a certain type more than others or if there's a particular account that's triggering more often than others. Of course, we have drop downs for these to help everybody filter things out. And one of the reasons we did this was, for those of you who are familiar with Guard Duty, know that you can do a master member setup, so you can actually compile all the data within one particular Guard Duty setup. And we elected not to do that so that we could take the Guard Duty data coming in and correlate it with any other logs that we need to. So, of course, one of the things that's included in this is some of the drill downs. So anywhere within here, we can actually click on any of the graphs or numbers, and there's a hidden panel that'll show up that'll start showing us the logs that we can actually then start clicking into and drilling down further, running more queries on, correlating with other logs and whatnot. This is especially important to correlate any CloudTrail activity back to it. While Guard Duty ingests that data, it's definitely helpful to see the CloudTrail logs along with the Guard Duty logs at the same time. So the flow on this, which some of it was mentioned earlier, was that information from Route 53, AWS CloudTrail, and VPC flow logs goes into Guard Duty, and Guard Duty is regionally based, so you have to set it up per region, of course. You set up one CloudWatch event, which then kicks off all the information over to Lambda and inputs it into a Splunk HTTPS event collector. This is actually really handy because when we configure all of our accounts through Terraform, we configure them all the same way. And this way, everything or all the Guard Duty information shows up immediately, and we don't have to do any further Splunk configuration. And for Splunk itself, and of course being Splunk Cloud subscribers, it was an easy ticket to request the Guard Duty add-on to be installed and then an HEC collector to be provisioned. So once we had those 2 done, we can now go ahead and provision Guard Duty and the CloudWatch event alerts and the Lambda into all of our accounts very consistently, and they all start automatically going into our Guard Duty reports in Splunk. Like I said, we created everything through Terraform modules, so it's all very consistent across all of our AWS accounts. For testing, we actually used one of our sandbox accounts and created a honeypot. And this was actually really important for us so we could actually kind of see the type of information that comes in and what type of frequency it is. One of the things that we learned and this is probably important to everybody, is that after the first guard duty alert, it sends that information every 6 hours. And this is kind of by design, because what we were finding was that with this honeypot, we were getting hundreds of messages, and the intent is that not to spam you, but to let you know that these events are happening. So we had a fully open EC2 instance, everything open, SSH, I mean, every port, just to see what was going to attack it. And we were getting hundreds of port scans and SSH attempts. So it was a great way to sort of get that data into Splunk and start figuring out reports on it. Earlier, we talked about some of the configurations of this, and Splunk mentioned some of the Splunk Lambda blueprints, and those were incredibly helpful to set this up. That particular blueprint's already in the blueprints through the AWS console. There's a video that they also mentioned that was extremely helpful in getting this set up. It's a couple of little tweaks, but the video goes right over it. So overall, this was extremely easy to set up. And it's been really nice to consistently push out to all of our accounts and all of our teams. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it back over to David Bell to start wrapping up.
So really the key business benefits for us were centralized real-time visibility within our DevSecOps team. Super important, as we have both front of house and back of house application teams moving out to AWS for a variety of different workloads. So centralizing that real-time visibility, being able to respond to those through alerting via Slack or incidents, super important for our group. Threat intelligence. So the threat intelligence piece, we are key on alerting and troubleshooting relative to events that we identify. Enhanced edge security, certainly through the use of our native tooling, Guard Duty being one of those, that allowed us to have velocity to get a solution in place really quickly for our needs for edge protection. And using, again, native tool sets allows our infrastructure as code pipeline to really link in really well. And lastly, faster time to value. Instead of standing up an elk stack relative to the Splunk solution, we went with Splunk Cloud specifically because it's ease of management and maintainability. We don't have to stand up hosts that we have to manage. We have a service that we can easily go and provision into automatically through the Splunk API. Back over to you, Rohit, to wrap it up.
Thank you, David. I'd like to thank our guests from REI for sharing their story, and also Splunk for sharing their perspective on security market and integrations they have with AWS. We hope this was helpful. We'll keep our lines open for a few more minutes in case you have questions. So we're seeing some questions flow through our chat panel here. We'll take one by one and go through one of those here. So starting with, this is a question for REI. Are you configuring Guard Duty in every region or just in the region you are building infrastructure? David, Rick, you want to take that?
Yeah, David Bell here, and Rick can bounce off. We are just implementing it within the region we're provisioned into, in addition to other regions, right?
Yes. So it's currently we're just single regionally based, but we have made the modules to work cross-regionally. The events part of it is already cross-regionally by design. So really, it just turns into turning on Guard Duty per region as we need it.
Okay, great. Next question. How real-time is the data collection and threat intel correlation into Splunk Enterprise Security and Guard Duty app? Splunk folks, you want to take that?
So the correlation depends on getting the data in from Guard Duty into ES, and it's as the term real time is really depends on how your searches and your data models and all the configuration happen. So today, Guard Duty app, I think you're referring to the add-on, does bring in the SIEM compliant data into ES. So if you have your data models in ES, all tuned properly, you should be able to get that correlation in no time.
Great, thank you, Wissam. Question for REI: how many AWS accounts does REI deploy to?
I can tell you that we have several, etc. For security concerns, we'd rather not actually give out the number, but we do have quite a few that we deploy out to.
Great. And also, David, another question: are you using Firehouse for VPC flow collection?
This is Rick. I'll actually answer that. Currently, we are not, but we are starting to investigate that. So that's next on our kind of Splunk journey, is to start going down that route and seeing if that improves any of our data collection.
Right. And also, what is REI using for responding to individual guard duty alerts within Splunk Enterprise Security, notables, or some external incident response ticketing system?
So mostly it's two different things. So we both get Slack alerts and Splunk alerts on these things, and as they come in, we're investigating them. And that's really about it. And that's really the important thing of it, is as we see these alerts come in, we sort of look at them one by one, and we start to determine patterns and figure out what's false flags and what's not. And it's certainly helping us create a better, better security posture for all of our environments. So we've been at it for a few months now, and we're certainly starting to get some data through to make some improvements to make sure everything is really well locked up.
Great. And also, you mentioned how the data from guard duty gets sent every 6 hours. Is this configurable option or not?
So this is Rick again, sorry, from REI. This may be a better question for AWS, but I have not seen any configuration for that 6-hour time frame. I believe that's inherent within Guard Duty and the CloudWatch event rule.
Yeah, so from AWS standpoint, I have to take a look into further details there, but we'll certainly have this list of questions after the webinar, and the questions that we're not able to get to, we'll help answer them over the email. Also, another question is, do you use or are you able to correlate threat intelligence service like Cisco Talos? This is the question from one of our audiences here. REI folks, you want to comment?
I don't know that we can comment on that one. That's probably a product question.
Okay. And are you using universal forwarders for OS and application logs, or using CloudWatch agents?
No. So currently, it's Splunk is monitoring the AWS infrastructure. We're leaving it to our application teams to develop what logging that they prefer. And then sometimes we tap into that, sometimes we don't. It depends on what the application is.
Great. And also, have you used professional services to set up your enterprise security?
It's not really the scope of the discussion, but yeah, I mean.
As in Splunk Pro services?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's.
This is all within our own group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the last question is, why did REI choose not to enable Guard Duty in all AWS regions?
Primarily, it's we're starting on our cloud journey here, and we're slowly rolling things out. So again, currently, we're only building in select regions, so we're only trying to enable things as we need them in each of the regions. Again, it's more of just a little bit of watching costs and a little bit of having too much configuration immediately. But eventually, the goal is to actually have it turned on everywhere.
I see. And how are you, REI, integrating threat intelligence into the solution?
That's on our roadmap. We can't really comment on this at this time.
And are you able to load in suspect IP or host and alert on them?
Yes, actually, it's Guard Duty. Some of the findings they come back with are definitely IPs and where it believes they're coming from. And yeah, you can certainly have Splunk queries or Splunk alerts to alert on certain things. Again, this has been really helpful to understand for us what alerts we see coming from, say, like our data centers, as opposed to external sources. So yeah, all that information comes through within the Guard Duty finding itself, and has been extremely useful.
Right. And are you collecting CloudTrail logs centrally, or do you do it by the region?
We're doing it by account.
What is the biggest challenge have you run into using Splunk Cloud in AWS, and how you overcame that challenge?
So this is Rick Adams. For me, the biggest thing is just learning how to write Splunk queries. It's not that they're extremely difficult, but if you kind of jump into it, there's a bit of a learning curve. But once you start figuring it out and you're figuring out, how the data sources work and how to call particular indexes, it's like everything. You start to figure it out, and as the further you go down, it gets easier. Being an old SQL administrator, I keep thinking in select statements, and it's not quite the same. So
Yeah. And how useful have you found Splunk and AWS add-on without enterprise security? Or would you have a comment on how useful would this add-on and Splunk would be without the ES app?
So personally, I personally haven't used the enterprise security Splunk app as much. I can tell you that the AWS add-ons are great. There's a ton of pre-configured reports in there. Obviously, you can add in more reports and more panels to them. The AWS app itself, to be honest, I haven't even gone through every single report in there. There's so many. But the setup of it's relatively easy, and once it's in there, it's great data to start looking through. And of course, a lot of the drop downs and everything are provided so that you can switch between accounts. So yeah, I mean, even without the enterprise security module or Splunk module, definitely the AWS add-ons are great.
Also, I would add to that. So I will add to that the Splunk app for AWS is compatible Splunk add-on and includes all those dashboards and different notables and detections that leveraging the add-on. So the Splunk app for AWS includes security, as David and Rick were mentioning.
Great. And question for Splunk, an easy ball here. What is the best way to learn Splunk queries?
I encourage you to check out. We have a free fundamentals class online that you can take. It's free, called Splunk Fundamentals. Just Google it and then sign up for that. That's Fundamentals 1. That's the free one.
Right, and then and on top of that, we saw earlier mentioned from a security context, there's something called Splunk Security Essentials. And if you want to get a sense for sort of, without knowing too deep all the syntax of our search processing language, but if you want to see examples of security use cases in action and see the example searches, that's a great place. You can go to www.splunkbase.com and search for Splunk Security Essentials, and you'll see over 350-ish security use case examples. And that's something, again, we saw mentioned earlier, and you'll see it in the slides when we send them out.
And David and Rick, are you guys using the Kinesis add-on today?
No, not yet, but we are investigating it.
Okay, great. So it looks like we were able to get through most of the questions here. We don't have any more questions coming through. So I'd like to again thank you, our guests here from REI and Splunk, for sharing this information. We hope this was very helpful to you. Again, thank you everyone for dialing in. Have a great rest of the week.